per day, and we can do that for the next 100 years. 18 months ago, the same Kuwaiti oil minister said, we can only produce 1.6 million barrels of oil per day, and that number will steadily decline indefinitely. Now, when we look at some of the other things around the world, when we look at what's happening, for example, between Iran and Israel, and just the rhetoric that goes on between the two nations, and Israel fearing for its international safety, what would happen at some point is if Israel ever decided to go in and bomb Iran, the Iranians would certainly be in a corner because of the militaries, for air militaries. The Israelis are certainly superior. Well, it'd be very simple if they're backed in a corner what Iran would do. She would mine the Strait of Hormuz, which is sea passage to over 40% of the world oil supply. And if she mines the Strait of Hormuz, what that means is no oil comes out of the Strait of Hormuz at all. You might say, well, Mike, why don't the Americans just send in the minesweepers? In theory, yes, it could work. However, there's something very important with that. It's called insurance. And no insurance company would ever insure these big tankers if, in fact, that's what's going on. So you're absolutely 100% guaranteed that oil would not flow out of the Middle East. What would that mean again? Oil up over $200 a barrel. What I'm telling you, and I'm gonna put more information together to give you a better understanding. The reason I am telling you this information is so you can start to prepare for what will occur in this trend. We are in a glory day of lower oil prices. You can take advantage of it right now. Now, let me go to another area, and I'll talk about it particularly because we're in California. Now, oftentimes in our ethnocentric viewpoint of what's going on in the world and the planet, we believe that democracy is the best form of government. Now, yes, that makes sense, and in many ways it is. However, in some ways it's not competitive. Now, let me tell you how it's not competitive. It's very difficult for a nation like the United States to make decisions based on 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year cycles. Because the first meeting that Obama will have when he's elected, he will have a meeting where he gets his committee together and his advisors, and the first meeting is going to be, how can we be reelected in 4 years? What do we have to do? That's the very first meeting of every new presidential administration. So if that's the first meeting, what are they thinking? 4 years. Well, China, on the other hand, she thinks in 50 and 100-year cycles. She is making decisions based on 50 and 100 years down the road because it's the same political party that's constantly in power. And that's a huge competitive advantage to the Chinese. Raise your hand if you understand that and you get that. Raise your hands. So these are all things that we have to keep in mind. Now, how does that relate then? Let me talk about something that will definitely occur in the United States, and we're not prepared for it at all. We're not prepared for it at all. I want to talk about something micro within California. Something very, very important. Now, first of all, how many people here are from California? Okay? And how many people are not from California? Okay? Congratulations to you, particularly who flew in or drove in or whatever it is to get here. What we have in Mexico, Mexico's largest oil reserve is called Cantarell. And what we know is that Cantarell is responsible for 40% of all the oil that comes out of, Cantarell is responsible for 40% of the government of Mexico's budget. 40%. Now, once again, what they discussed 4 years ago was that Cantarell was going to be running and have enough oil to supply at current levels for the next 50 years. Well, over the last 2 years, what they've stated is the life cycle of Cantarell is 15 years. It is actual recovery this year is down 416,000 barrels a day, which is down 25%, which tells me its life is less than 8 years. Now, what does that mean to you, particularly from California who are in the room? Well, if you're Mexican and you are partially or totally dependent upon government assistance and social programs in the United States, and 100% of that funding stops to you, what do you think you're going to do? Are you going to head south? Unlikely. Are you going to do whatever it takes with your own family to head north with some sort of opportunity and feed your family? And even if that involves making deadly crosses that you may or may not survive. And this is the type of thing. So does Obama know that that's happening? Raise your hands if you think yes. Of course it does. Of course he does. But it's a little like human nature. Let's reflect on our own lifestyles of when we were going to school. What did we do at school? Well, we knew the teacher told us weeks in advance about the big test. And we just it's Friday night. No, I'm going out to see, my friends. It's Saturday. I'm a little bit tired because of the night before. And then Sunday comes, well, it's church day, so I'm not doing anything today. And then Monday comes, I'm too busy. I got other things to do. And before you know it, the clock is ticked away. So it is the night before the exam, and you're still really tired because it's just been so time-consuming to have thought about this test, and then you actually think about it, and you're studying on the way to school while you're walking. Now, that's how we as humans, a lot of times, have operated. Who can relate to that story? Raise your hands. Yes, we've all done it. We've all done it. Some of us a little bit too much. But what happens is the same thing. Obama is saying, well, it's probably not going to show up during my presidency. And I don't really want to rile things up in California right now. So what I think I'll do is it won't be an issue. Plus, in 10 years, when it's likely going to happen anyway, I'll no longer be the president of the United States. Someone else can worry about that. Do we sort of have an idea why democracy is a great system, but it doesn't always work on 4-year presidential cycles? Right? Let's talk about some of the other things that are going around the world. First of all, who's learning lots? Okay, who's happy they came? Whew. Thank God, that's always a risky question to ask up here. All right. Thank you for raising your hands. Now, what we look at is, if we look at Russia as another example. Russia, what we've seen is that Russia has had, over the last year, absolutely 3% decline in oil output. And in Russia, something remarkable happened. When it moved from a communist state to a market society, what occurred is all of those who were very politically connected ended up owning the country and all of its resources. And those people are called the oligarchs. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of oligarchs, okay? Those people are called the oligarchs. And the oligarchs essentially came in and instantly overnight, the equivalent of a government bureau